have our group members here. So we have our able group members, group 3 members. As you can see the pictures here. So anytime you see them anywhere, you are able to recognize them as fellows in the making and as fellow colleagues as well. So without much ado, I'll introduce the next speaker. We are very fortunate to have a lady speak today, because for the past 2 weeks, it's been the guys on the roll. But today we are fortunate to have a lady speak. She is the Deputy Clerk, that's Information Management Services of the Parliament of Ghana. Her mandate is to support the Office of the Clerk of Parliament by overseeing the development, coordination, and implementation of the overall strategy, policies, and guidelines for information support services rendered by the Parliamentary Service to ensure the smooth, efficient, and effective conduct of parliamentary business in accordance with applicable laws, rules, procedures, practices, and conventions. She epitomizes effective management, excellent leadership, professionalism, and competence. Her knowledge of parliamentary practice and procedure and ability to function effectively as a staff of the Parliamentary Service and organization development practitioner, coupled with her excellent communication skills, critical thinking, decision-making, interpersonal, and problem-solving skills, make her an asset to an organization and a system, and also an asset to this fellowship program. She has a strong public sector background, backed by a daring private sector mentality, and has held positions at management levels within the service and has served as clerk to several standing and select committees of Parliament, including the Committee on Defense and Interior and Committee on Foreign Affairs. Her achievements include pioneering the establishment of the Research Department of Parliament in 2021. She also operationalized the Parliamentary Training Institute, that's PTI, in 2016, the Chief Information Office in 2022, and the Office of the Deputy Clerk in 2023, where she currently occupies. That's quite a lot. She is a lifelong learner and boasts an invaluable wealth of experience, having worked with the Parliamentary Service since January 1996. Wow. She holds an executive master's degree in governance and leadership from GIMPA, master's in conflict, peace, and security from the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center. Without much ado, let me introduce and make welcome Gloria Sarku.
Oh my God. I almost took back my Ephraim. It's okay. I'll moderate myself. Thank you. No. This hype is too much and it's very misleading. This is data fraud. Anyway, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And I feel honored and privileged to be given the opportunity to show and express my weakness. The guy has overhyped me and has oversold me. It's like Pintimaento. You see that the vessel he's selling to you is very empty. I don't have anything to do with ICT or internet. I'm 000. And so I hope he has not overhyped and overraised your expectations. But this evening, Group 3 has asked me to represent, and it's an honor, I said, and share with you our understanding of this wonderful topic, digital trade and the internet, which was carried or facilitated on the ICANN platform by no less a person, by a professor, and who happens to be a lady, Professor Susan Aronson. And so today you have a mini Professor Susan Aronson, even though I cannot lace her shoes and I don't come anywhere near her, but I'm proud to at least walk in her shadows and attempt to simplify, bring to you digital trade and internet governance made easy. That is said in our own words and by our own understanding. Whatever the gaps will be, we have our seniors and our professionals here, and don't fill it in for us. So before we come to tell you about the outline of representation and what you should expect, as usual, we want to start with a quote from the founder of and CEO of O'Reilly Media. And that reminds me, please, those of you who log on and leave the laptops and go and have your dinner, you might be surprised at the end. I'll call your name and ask you a question. So please give me your rapt attention, be behind your screen and listen to this amateur Wahala day for you. Thank you. So the CEO of O'Reilly Media says that every industry and every organization will have to transform itself in the next few years because what is coming to us is bigger than the original internet. And you need to understand it, get on board with it, and figure out how to transform your business. I take it again because it is the basis and the point from which we are taking our first slide. The CEO says that every industry and every organization, which means not only businesses, will have to transform themselves in the next few years because what is coming at us is bigger than the original internet. And one needs to understand it, get on board with it, and figure out how to transform one's business. So at the end of the day, we are going to take you through a few points, a few slides, and we hope that we'll be able to bring you on board to what digital trade and the internet governance structure is all about. Can we move on, please? So the whole course begins with us being taken back to our first model, our first presentation, where we learned about the beginnings of the internet. In fact, we were even wondering why we had to go back to learn, to read all those things again. But as you go on, you would understand the essence from starting from the basics. Because if you don't know where you're coming from, it will be difficult for you to figure out where you're going through. And when you arrive there, you'll not be able to make an analysis. So we are reminded again that the internet began as a small operation by the US military. They were using it to organize how they move information from one point to the other among themselves. And then we learned about how this small endeavor by the ARPANET since 1969 grew to 1973 to become a global transaction as they added more networks onto it. Now we are reminded that in 1983, this ARPANET ceased to be ARPANET and became the internet as we know it today, as the US military saw that they needed to bring more actors on board to make it more operational and to make it more viable. And then in 1994, under the Bill Clinton government, we are told that private enterprises or private firms were allowed on board this enterprise called internet to help carry the information from one place to the other, data conveyance. So in 1994, the private sector was introduced because formerly it was only the government, or let's say the public sector, that was controlling it. Now we also reminded that this small enterprise, when it began, at that time when they projected, they thought that in some years to come far away, they would be able to be able to exhaust the 4 billion internet protocol addresses that they had formulated. Which was running on IP version 4. But a few years along the line, they forecasted and noticed that the 4 billion addresses that they had envisaged would soon be consumed. And to have insurance and hindsight, the IP version 6 was constructed. And that gives us a big threshold and assures us that we will never run short of IP addresses, no matter the outburst of the population. It would interest you to know that currently in Ghana, January 2024, we have 24.6 million people who have internet access. But we are not the best, or we are not the first when it comes to internet access polls. Nigeria in Africa tops the list with 103 million, and Egypt comes second with 82 million. But with our 24.6 million internet access provision, we have reached 69.8% penetration, which is not bad. But all this also brings us to our next issue, which means that as this internet grows, what began as a small military operation, which was became a network of networks and expanded, the private sector was brought on board with the introduction of fiber optics, etc., to carry information. The sad or the good and the bad aspect is that it also exposed the internet to other issues. Internet has not, the expansion and the explosion of the internet comes other issues as to how the norms that govern the use of the internet will be kept in shape and will be safeguarded, controlled, and adhered to. The issues of who governs the internet, which at the beginning that it was a small group and therefore very easy to manage, also comes to the fore. And then also now also comes to the fore the issue that the internet has become the determinant of what we do, where we go, what we buy, how we buy it, what we do, how we do things. Almost everybody sitting behind this computer or laptop would agree that from morning to evening, at least 10% or 5% of your life would have been affected by digitalization one way or the other. And so this brings us to the issue of why it is necessary for us to remember that the internet did not begin the way it began, and also remember what the CEO told us, that if you don't transform and get on and be interested, but that was the last part of the presentation by Frank, how we can join and how we can also contribute to the work of ICANN, then would miss the boat and it would be a sorry state. So without going too deep into these issues, because we already know the norms of the internet, and we know who governs the internet, that is not one person, etc., would move on to the next slide, please. How the internet is driving us, we come to what is digital trade and how the internet is grinding or driving digital trade. And with this, I would want to help us situate or understand or agree to what we mean by digital trade. And in simple terms, I would say that digital trade is any trade, any exchange that is enabled by digital technologies. It could be the purchase of a book online, which is even delivered physically, but there's a digital aspect, or it could be the purchase of an ebook online. So digital trade is anything or any exchange, any trade, any one way or the other by digital technology. And so the digital trade also comes, as we say, as one of the fruits or the benefits of the internet. So we say what the internet does and how it facilitates international trade and business must be of concern and must be of interest to we, the end users, not only the national players. How the internet is changing who trades and who advertises where and when, and then the fact that governments all over are using trade agreements to govern the internet must be a source of worry. Now, governments have a right and have a role and a responsibility to protect their citizenry, to protect their territories, and to protect their economies. Because of this, every country has got its own domestic laws, its domestic policies that govern trade. But we are also aware that in the internet space, we are talking about the norms which are interoperability, we're talking about multi-stakeholderism, we're talking about open access and transparency and accountability. So now how are we able to match this from a small closed internet transaction as was envisaged to be, which has now exploded and become global and has become the driving force of economies, of governments, of businesses, of organizations, and of even individual lives. And so that is where the concern and the focus is now, as to how the governing bodies can be able to drive and make sure that individual government policies will not affect or impact the use of internet in promoting or driving digital trade? Because we are saying this because the internet in itself is a global and a universal workspace. It belongs to all. No one person controls it, and no one person has got monopoly over it. However, as we said, domestic policies will affect the internet norms, and it will affect the overall internet usage. And so if China, in its own right and its own wisdom, decides that I do not want this trade to be perpetrated over my landscape, over my territory, not in my waters, not in my airspace, or even digitally, then you can imagine how it is going to affect the global right to trade, the global right to exchange of goods, the global right to exchange of information and data. And so these are the issues that we are trying to bring to the fore. And we are also saying that whether we like it or not, with the explanation of internet and internet usage, digital trade necessarily necessitates policies and actions from all actors. All actors meaning academia, meaning government, that means all the policies, and then the end users, of course, and then of course the producers, the service providers. And so we are saying that the 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 explosion of digital trade would mean that the issues of digital governance would have to be looked at again, so that we are able to ensure that there's free flow of data with trust in the system. Because the internet system has been built to ensure that as data moves from one end to the other, it is moving securely, safely, and that the customer or the end user can have faith in the system. But with this explosion, how do we ensure that? Now, other policy areas that the digital trade will necessitate in relation to internet usage is that digital trade must be facilitated. And so we are looking at the ability to have stakeholders to give us services that allow electronic of issues, electronic signatures, etc. However, let me be quick to say that as we look at this, we should also be mindful of the blind side that the local policies, these the international policies would also have to be looked at. For example, Ghana, as far back as a law called Cap 262, came out with a law to protect illiterates. About you can't take an illiterate in the market, put a computer on something that she doesn't understand. It must be interpreted to her. She must fully understand before you put a thumbprint on it. This was way back 1912. At that time, digital trade had not begun. Now, a market woman in Makola, would go on the net and want to import a bill of cloth from Holland. And she's transacting this over the internet. So it behoves on the governing bodies, the governing authorities, the national authorities, to make sure that they safeguard this innocent citizen who might be an illiterate. So these are examples of the policies that we need to look at to govern digital trade and the internet. And also I can say with surety that Uganda, for example, has got an Illiterates Protection Act. At the time it was made, trade was face to face. Now we have digital trade. How would that augur well for the citizenry? I also want to bring our minds to the fact that Ghana not long ago enacted the Right Information Act as 989 of 2019, which gives people the right to ask for information. Governments after governments have been hiding behind this to force companies and corporations to give them information. But these laws differ from country to country. And so when it comes to global trade, how are we going to harness all this to ensure that it works well for us? Other issues that come from digital trade and internet will be consumer trust. Again, the consumers or the end user must be sure that he's well secured, he's insured, and he's assured. So there must be full disclosure from the service providers, as we learned in the beginning, the first model. But now with the explosion of trade, of the internet usage, how well are we sure that we can regulate and ensure that service providers give full disclosure? So we're talking about 360 degrees safety, both for the workers and the staffs of the corporation, the consumer and the organizations. We could go on and on. Frank, can we move to the next slide, please?
Sure.
Thank you. So group 3 has summarized what we have said about the beginnings of the internet and how it affects it affects digital trade, which has become the norm of the day. And we are saying that government policies have an impact on internet usage. And we are saying this against the norms of the use of the internet. Interoperability, which means that every country that has internet must use the same standards. And so if one government standards or its laws will affect it, what will happen? And we are saying that as we are looking at that, we are also reminding ourselves that whilst the government policies must align, we must also align to the global trade dictates. Ghana, for example, as a member of the ACPUU, African Caribbean Pacific European Community Network, has signed onto the Economic Partnership Agreement. Those agreements come with their own restrictions. It comes with their own laws and all that. So if Ghana, for example, is saying that we don't want anybody to import tilapia to Ghana, and yes, somebody can sit in his room and go on the net and send information that Ghanaians don't have enough tilapia to eat, and so I want to import. What are the filters that are going to make sure that they safeguard the trade over the internet, to make sure that they adapt to global trade dictates whilst not violating the norms of the internet usage. And so we are saying that all this will have implications for internet stability. The government's policies and rules vis the international laws would have implications. And so we are saying that whilst all this is going on in the background, ICANN and all those of us who are interested in internet governance would have to also put ourselves in readiness to put things in place to ensure that information flow and access to information and the security of information that is translated via the internet is also ensured. Everything that has to do with movement of data must conform to the norms and the criteria that have been set in place. And then overall, we are saying that interoperability, conformity, that there should not be different standards. And so to say that even though this began in 69 to 73 to 83, up to where we are today, it still remains the same internet with the same initial vision to maintain an open internet access with shared values and standards, with no one person, no one entity, no one country controlling it. Frank, we move on, please. Digital trade and cybercrime. So as much as the internet is expanding and exploding, and we are using it to drive commerce, we are using it to drive the way we do things, it also comes with its own hazards. And so invariably, it is said that the internet has become one of the greatest promoter of cybercrime. Whether this is true or not, we are all witness to the issue that it is a thorn in the flesh of the use of internet. And so when we talk about the cybercrime issues, we're talking about issues of pornography, issues of identity theft, issues of hacking, privacy invasion, the use of malware, cyber squatting. But again, we are reminding ourselves that most of this come up from the people's greed and their falling for baits to fall in for free online services, and this normally invites malware. And so we are also saying that there are types of insurances that can be put in place against a cybercrime. And this is where ICANN also comes in as a governing and mediating body to make sure that the service providers are also make sure that the services that they deliver conform to the dictates of the internet space, so that if data has to be encrypted, it's encrypted. If you are giving a service, there should be full disclosure of what the customer should expect what security issues you put in place to protect the customer. So the customer has choices, the customer knows. Most of the time, things pop out, they ask for you to accept cookies, etc., and you don't even know what you are subscribing to. And so this behoves on ICANN and the governing authorities to ensure that there's enough insurance and there's enough protection for the consumer, for the end users, against all these incidences of cybercrime. But again, we are saying that the issue of interoperability also comes to the fore when it comes to the issue of cybercrime, because we are saying that there should be the same standard everywhere. And so it also makes it very, very easy for the cybercrime operators to also just quickly and easily, with the click of a finger, as soon as they're able to break through one thing, they're able to go through and make a windmill of it. So issues of access to the internet are also one that we have to look at when we look at the issue of cyber crimes, because we are saying that yes, everyone should have access to the internet, should be everybody has the freedom to connect wherever he is and the right to usage. But we are looking at this again against the fact that every government also has the responsibility to protect its citizenry. And so sometimes they'll bring out policies, norms, acts. And then in the other vein, we are also accusing them of being too domineering, being too censoring, etc. So they're finding the thin line in allowing government to protect us, allowing even the companies that are giving us the services to protect us as they ask for information, and then also having our freedom, also having our privacy. Is finding the thin line here has also become a bit worrying. Now, the issues of trade and having more access, free trade, because invariably economic data is proving that with the onslaught of internet, yes, business has boomed, economies are blossoming, and that one, nobody can challenge it. In fact, Don Chambers, the CEO of Cisco, said that at least 40% of all businesses will die in the next 10 years if they don't figure out how to change their entire company and accommodate new technologies, which means that technology is the way to go. So if technology is the way to go and we're asking for more access, more of internet access to do our business, to trade, then who is going to sit, and how do we also make sure that we are ensuring that the safeguarding of the space for everyone to be sure that business is going on safely? So with all that we have said and all that we have looked at, what is the future of digital trade with internet governance? We are looking at fair and inclusive governance, where everyone has got a voice and everyone knows what is happening. Everyone is sure that his data as is putting out there is safe. Now, everything you want to buy, even if you want to buy a ticket online, they're asking you for your data, from the color of your hair to when you went to school, etc., your private information. Now, as these companies collect this data, how sure are we of the safety of the data? Sometimes we are told they even sell to third parties. And so all these issues are issues of future of concern to us. We are told of people hacking companies' servers, and then when they hack the server, they have the right to all this information. In our own workplace, we are told to clock into work, instead of just using our ID card, we are asked to thumbprint, fingerprint. So from this lesson, I was telling myself, as my fingerprint goes there, and as it goes to the server that we use in our office is not even located, it's not even housed there, it's housed outside the country, which means that all this my sensitive data is housed outside there. Now you can imagine what will happen if somebody has access to that fingerprint, which could be used to do several and many other things. And yet we are being told and reminded every minute that this is the way to go. Digitalization is the way to go. And indeed, if you don't go, you go extinct in the next 10 years. And so we are looking at the impact of digital internet and the impact of internet governance on digital trade, its impact on individual countries, and then how our individual country actions or inactions would affect the whole internet trade and the whole internet governance thing. I sit here and I ask myself, how many countries and how many nations, especially in Africa, in coming out with policies, are even aware of how the internet governance terrain operates. And to join this program, I did not know it myself. And so you can imagine when all these acts I'm reading about as recent as 2018, 2019 were being formulated, nobody gave a look at the internet governance scheme. The WTO that governs trade itself, we read, since 1995 has not been able to meet to review its trade policies, and is the biggest trading organization. So globally, we have a challenge. When it comes to individual countries, we have a challenge because we are not even aware, we are not exposed until more and more people get aboard this ICANN platform and get to understand how this works. I'm sure would be doing ourselves more harm, and that's why I really commend this course and this whole program. And so the issues that confront us for the future also include lack of technical innovations. Already, I'm telling you, even to prepare policies, we don't have the wherewithal. We are not there. Not talk about technology. We are nowhere near. But the sad truth is that the power is in the hands of a few. It's when it comes to the software and all those things, when you take Apple, Google, and the rest, all the top three are in the Americas. And you can imagine if they just cough or sneeze now, where will all be? If Google decides to tweak something small now, many companies will suffer, they'll suffer losses. They can decide to mislead our businesses. These are issues of worry, especially as we are understanding that internet is the way to go. And that makes internet governance and trade a real issue that government attentions must be brought to it, and all the policymakers and the stakeholders attention must be brought to it. That it's not a matter of just putting economic figures together, but knowing what is going on there. We know that the good sides are also there, that drones are being used even in the health field very, very well to deliver healthcare to unreachable places. Those are pluses. And the future, we want to see more of this happen. But again, the internet governance space must look at this and how they moderate and how they rule all those places. There's confusion in the regulatory environment. That's one we cannot downplay it. The UK, which is our I would say our role model. We always come there, go to them for benchmarking. They've had their right to information bill long ago. But interestingly, just yesterday, I found out from them that they are in the process of coming out with a digital information bill, 2024. They said by July, the House will sit on it. Because they said that despite all their data protection laws, they have had general data protection regulations which bound them together with the EU. The European Economic Area has general data protection rules, but yes, still they have seen that there's a lacuna, there's a void when it comes to internet governance, because when those laws are being made, the digital trade had not gone to this dimension. And so they are realizing more and more that they need to put laws in place to govern digital information as it goes across the waves. And so we are expecting the Digital Information Bill 2024. Have our African nations awoken out of their slumber to this need and to this dilemma that this is the way to go and this is what we have to do. And so when we talk about data enabling digital technologies, I think that you and I have all got work to do. We have to come on board with a shared approach to protecting privacy online. We have to make our voice heard. We talk about generational slants. The younger ones find it more easy to get on board the digital train. Those who were born before computers, the BBCs, find it very, very difficult to get on board. But we are told that whether we like it or not, that is what has come, and it has come to stay, and we must get on board, conform, or will not be able to do it. So the impact on the economy is there, yes. But how sure are we that the e-life that we are gearing for with digital trade, internet governance, will it be easier? Will it be healthier? Is it the right way to go? Until we get on board the discussion, we said if you're not at the table, we'll take decisions without you. The decisions might not be the right ones, but it will be taken anyway. So it is better we all get on board and be part of the decision-making train. So this, all this that we've talked about place a demand on internet governance. Our digital trade has come to stay, but these issues open our eyes to see that all the communities, all the volunteering groups, anyone that you take has got a role to play in ensuring that the digital space is well catered for, is policed, and works for the end users. And above all, to ensure that the norms of the internet are safeguarded. They are very important. The norm of interoperability. So we have the same standards everywhere. Multi-stakeholderism, making sure that no one country, no one organization, no one person controls the internet. No one is muted and no one is downplayed. Is very, very important. Openness, that we shall have open access to the internet and not have restrictions because of domestic laws and policies. But after all this, there should be accountability. We should know why our information is being taken. We should know how it is being protected. We should know how it's being safeguarded. We should know that there's compliance at all levels for the stakeholders, both the service providers, both the regulators, the national governments who are using trade policies to bully the internet governance system, and the end users who are also accountable to ask questions, accountable to get on board and be involved, accountable to educate themselves as to what the space brings on board. So I would like to end by saying that Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, says that in today's era of volatility, there is no other way but to reinvent the only sustainable advantage you can have over others is agility. You must be fast, you must be changed, you must be prone to change. And even if you're born before computer, please, nothing else is sustainable. Everything else you can create. And so we must get on board and do the right thing. Finally, Frank, we are come to takeaways and we would want to know what we have learned from this journey of internet, digital trade and internet governance, reminding ourselves that the internet as we have today has not changed, but it began as a small operation meant to cater for a much smaller vision, but it has grown exponentially and has become the driving force of what we do today, determining what we do, where we go, what we buy, how we buy it, making life easy in one vein, but making life scary in another way as we are prone to all stuff predators. And yes, still we are told that is the way to go. And so how do we get on board and how do we help the regulators safeguard that space and make it a safe place to do? What did you learn? I hand over to our moderator, Ephraim, who will take up from here. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was some detail, and I'm sure we are all witnesses of that kind of evidence in the portfolio. But she has so much experience in governance, and this shows that we have a long way to go. One critical thing I learned from this is that data and policy are interrelated. Those things are very, very imperative if it comes to policy building. And also multi-stakeholder approaches, because one critical thing is that we are segmenting people. We have meetings without other people. We don't have representations in various stakeholder meetings, and this is a problem. If you're able to solve that problem, having everybody on board, having that multi-stakeholder approach is very critical. And the last thing I learned was agility. We should be lifelong learners, continuous learners, be agile. Because one thing I took from what she said was that we need to be changing each and every time. We cannot really maintain things because as the world is approaching, if you are still going to maintain things, we are really going to hurt or shoot ourselves in the foot. Thank you very much, Gloria. That was quite insightful and that was quite detailed. you.